$2.6 billion. A former car factory, 15 miles from the lake, Cleveland is making the biggest stadium bet in its history, and the city it leaves behind might turn out to be the real winner. For 25 years, the Cleveland Browns have played football on the edge of Lake Erie. Their stadium sits between the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the water, one of the most distinctive urban settings in the entire NFL. On a clear game day, you can see the lake from the upper deck. That stadium will be demolished. In its place, Cleveland is building something it has never had before: an enclosed, climate-controlled, year-round venue on a flat industrial site next to a runway in a suburb most people drive past on the way to the airport. The price tag is $2.6 billion, making it one of the most expensive stadium projects in American sports history. The architect is the same firm that designed SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. The ambition is the same size, but to understand what's being built, you have to understand what came before it.
You leave a lot of memories here, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, really sad to see him go. Just don't even know how to react.
The story of Cleveland's stadium problem goes back further than most people realize, and it starts with a betrayal. In 1995, Art Modell, then owner of the Cleveland Browns, packed up the franchise and moved it to Baltimore. The team became the Ravens. Cleveland was left without an NFL team for 3 years, and without a stadium entirely. The wound ran so deep that Ohio's state legislature passed a law in 1996 specifically designed to stop it ever happening again. They named it the Modell Law. It required any professional sports team that took public money and played in a tax-supported facility to give the city the opportunity to buy the team or negotiate before leaving. It was Cleveland's guarantee that they would never be abandoned again. The new Browns franchise arrived in 1999. Their stadium opened on September 12th of that year, a $283 million open-air facility on the Lake Erie waterfront, built by HOK Sport and seating 67,400 fans. By 2025, that building was one of the older stadiums in the NFL. Its location, dramatic as it was, created a specific problem: the weather. Lake Erie in November is brutal. That limits the types of events the venue can host, the types of concerts it can attract, and one thing above all others: it permanently disqualifies the city from hosting a Super Bowl. The NFL has a rule: a Super Bowl must take place either in a warm weather city or in an enclosed venue. Cleveland, in its open-air Lakefront Stadium, could never qualify. By 2024, the owners, the Haslam Sports Group, had made a decision. A renovation wouldn't be enough. What Cleveland needed wasn't a refurbishment, it needed a dome. And then, in 2024, everything changed. The Haslams had been in conversations with the city about the stadium's future for years before any public announcement. Cleveland's mayor, Justin Bibb, wanted to keep the team downtown. His position was straightforward: renovate the existing Lakefront Stadium. In April 2024, he sent the Haslams a letter committing $461 million in city funding toward a renovation, enough to anchor a roughly $1 billion rebuild of the existing ground. The deadline to accept was 12 days away. The Haslams didn't take the offer. On February 8, 2024, the local outlet NEO Trans broke the story. The Browns owners weren't thinking about renovation at all. They were pursuing a $2.4 billion roofed stadium in Brook Park, a suburb 15 miles from downtown, adjacent to Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. In August that year, the Browns went public with renderings designed by HKS Architects. The reaction from City Hall was immediate. Bibb called the plan frustrating and profoundly disheartening. The county executive, Chris Ronayne, opposed it outright and spent months publicly lobbying for the lakefront option. But what came next was something nobody saw coming. The stadium was designed by HKS, the Dallas-based architecture firm responsible for SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, and AT&T Stadium in Dallas. For Cleveland, they've designed something that deliberately references the city it belongs to. The roof is translucent ETFE, the same lightweight polymer material used at US Bank Stadium, which allows natural light to flood the interior while sealing out Lake Erie's winters entirely. HKS say the transparent sections were inspired by Cleveland's own glass atriums, Tower City Center, the Cleveland Museum of Art. You're inside, but it doesn't feel like being inside. The seating bowl is configured for proximity in a way no other NFL stadium has attempted. The first row of seats sits 16 feet from the field. The last row is 248 feet away. For context, both of those numbers are closer than the equivalent distances at most current NFL venues. Nearly 80% of all seats are in the lower deck. The Dawg Pound, the section that defines Browns game days, has been redesigned as a steep modern stand at the end zone, claimed by HKS to sit closer to the action than any fan section in the league. EVO standard capacity, 67,500. Expanded for concerts and events, 75,000. And it sits next to one of the busiest airports in the Midwest. The total cost of the stadium is $2.6 billion, having already risen from the $2.4 billion originally announced. The surrounding mixed-use development adds another $1 billion, bringing the combined investment to $3.6 billion. That makes this the largest economic development project in Northeast Ohio's history. The funding split. The Haslam Sports Group is contributing $1.75 billion privately. The state of Ohio is providing $600 million through that contested unclaimed funds mechanism, repayable through tax revenues generated by the development over 16 years. The county declined to contribute. The $2.4 billion original figure assumed equal public and private halves. What was eventually agreed is a different deal. On a per-seat basis, the numbers are significant. $2.6 billion divided by 67,500 seats comes to approximately $38,500 per seat. That's roughly the cost of a new car for every chair in the building. The economic case rests on access. An enclosed venue positioned 15 miles from a major international airport can host events the old Lakefront Stadium never could. Super Bowls, NCAA Final Fours, major concerts, international football matches. The Browns commissioned a study projecting nearly 5,400 jobs and $1.2 billion in annual economic activity for Cuyahoga County. Those are the team's own figures. Treat them as a target, not a guarantee. What's not contested is the basic logic. An open-air stadium in Cleveland will always have a ceiling. A dome removes it. The numbers tell part of the story. The rest of it is harder to quantify. Cleveland has been planning for its lakefront since before most living residents were born. Over a century of proposals, visions, and master plans. Most of them shelved because a 67,000-seat stadium sat on the most valuable parcel. When the Browns announced they were leaving, Mayor Bibb called it disheartening. He was probably right. And then he immediately opened a competitive process to reimagine 50 acres of Lake Erie waterfront as a public neighborhood. 18 developers from around the world applied. DiGeronimo Development was appointed master developer in December 2025. The city and the county are now lobbying Congress to close Burke Lakefront Airport, a 450-acre site adjacent to the stadium land. If that happens, Cleveland gains hundreds of additional waterfront acres, enough to build a neighborhood, not just a park. Jimmy Haslam invoked Nashville at the groundbreaking, a city that had no business hosting a Super Bowl 10 years ago, and now does. He's right that the playbook exists. What he's betting is that Cleveland will follow it. This isn't just a dome next to a runway. It's a city placing two bets simultaneously, one on a suburb, one on a shoreline, and hoping both of them come in. Here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Brook Park or the lakefront? Which Cleveland bet do you think actually works? The dome in the suburb or the waterfront without the stadium? One answer per comment. If you want to understand the real stories behind projects like this one, the politics, the money, the fights that never make the press release, subscribe to GOAT Stadiums. That's what we cover every week. Next up, Jimmy Haslam said Cleveland is following the Nashville playbook. So we're going to Nashville, inside the $2.1 billion Titan Stadium, to find out what that playbook actually cost and whether it delivered what they promised. Because great stadiums aren't just built, they're fought for.